is Kate Fitzgerald. I am the Communications and Marketing Manager at Holocaust Education Ireland. I've been with HEI for the last nearly 2 years now, and the study visits are a particularly exciting aspect of my work on a couple of different fronts. Mainly, one, it feels like I'm really going out into the field, visiting these sites where so much of this took place. And two, I find a lot of personal fulfillment in helping people have these experiences on study visits and hearing their thoughts and hearing the things they come away with. So I'm delighted that we're running another one to Berlin this year, and we'll have another one to Krakow running later in the year. So I'm very excited that they are back up and running. To give you a brief outline of what I'm going to cover this evening, I'm going to go through some of the aims of the study visit to give you an idea of what should be at the front of your mind going into it. Then I'll cover some of the structure of the trip and what you can expect when you're on it. I then want to talk about the question of why this trip specifically and why should you go on this trip. I'll finish up by giving you some practical information about the trip, and then I'll answer any questions that you might have. So I like to think of the study visits as having three main aims. The first being to increase or improve your existing knowledge, whether you have no knowledge on this topic outside of the fact that the Holocaust happened, or you're looking to complement your existing understanding. The study visit caters to all levels, so all are welcome. Our second aim is targeted at the educators in our group. We engage in on-the-ground reflection on how the information that is being presented to you can be effectively transmitted to students in an age-appropriate manner, depending on the level that you teach. And we have people that come on the study visit who are primary teachers, secondary teachers, university lecturers, and not in education at all. So we kind of welcome everybody in on that front. The third aim of our study visit is to offer historical context to life before, during, and after the Holocaust. It's important to us in HEI that the full historical picture is given to you. We like to emphasize the vibrancy and the diversity of Jewish life in pre-war Berlin, as well as looking at contemporary discussions around racism and anti-Semitism today. So what can we expect when we go on these visits? So we visit a range of memorial sites, historically significant locations, and innovative museums to bring the history of Berlin to life. The trip is based around these sites. So in the interests of full transparency, we don't recommend the trip to anyone who has any serious mobility issues. We can see some of the sites listed on this slide here, including Sachsenhausen concentration camp, memorial and museum, the House of the Wannsee Conference, and the Topography of Terror Museum. These pictures I actually took myself on last year's Berlin study visit. So you can see very little rain, so we might be lucky again this year. The tours of all of the sites and museums that we visit are facilitated by academics and local historians who operate at the top of the field of Holocaust and genocide studies. So we really do have their expertise at our fingertips at all times during this study visit. Another quite unique aspect of the Berlin study visit is the fact that you meet with both survivors and descendants of perpetrators. We're very fortunate that there are survivors still in Berlin today who are willing to share their stories with us. But it's also incredibly rare that descendants of perpetrators are willing to tell their stories. For me, this is arguably one of the most impactful parts of the Berlin study visit. When descendants of perpetrators share their stories, they will often talk about the responsibility that they feel to tell the stories of the atrocities that were committed by their ancestors. But another really interesting thing that they speak about is the complications that come up with not only growing up in a family with the legacy of the war, but growing up in a family with the legacy of perpetration, and growing up in Germany then. We had an amazing woman called Jacqueline Guise speak to us last year. I believe she's been booked for this year as well. And it was just one of the most, I don't want to exaggerate, but it was one of the most impactful moments when you were face to face with somebody who had this connection. We're so used to dealing with people who have connections on the other side of survivors, second, third, fourth generation. We don't often hear from second, third generation people who are descended from those who perpetrated it. So for me, I'm quite enthusiastic about this aspect of the study visit. So why go on this trip? I think it's a fairly common question that when you attend information sessions like this, you think of, okay, but what's unique about this trip? Berlin is not totally inaccessible. It's not a far off place. So I think people think, well, why don't I just go to Berlin by myself or with friends or with family? And to that, I say, what is setting this trip apart are the resources that we have. From the academics that facilitate our seminars and discussions to the guides that cater specifically to our group, we're really quite spoiled. These are resources that are not on offer to the ordinary tourist. So really, it's not like any other trip to Berlin. We work with Dr. Carlos Meissner and Martin Lange, who offer a really unique perspective on the history of Berlin. They are both from Berlin. And the approach they take is they ask us to examine the meaning and the significance behind each site that we visit, asking the what, when, where, and how these victims are being commemorated. So, for example, one of the juxtapositions that I like to present to people is the memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe beside the Brandenburg Gate. You might know it. It's those big concrete slabs in the middle of the city. At that memorial, Jewish people are being remembered and commemorated very differently to, say, the memorial to victims who died in Sachsenhausen. And that issue arises largely due to the post-war political landscape of Germany and the emergence of West and East Germany. And I think that's something that a lot of people, when they come on this visit, it doesn't even pop up into their head because they're solely focused on periods of history being discrete objects separate from each other. So we're having on the ground reflection, asking ourselves, who is doing the remembering? To what end are victims being commemorated? And who, if any, is not being commemorated? Another aspect of the study visit that is quite beneficial for those who are on it is our group size. We usually max out at between 15 and 20 people on our groups, which means that we can have reflective and open conversations with our guides, the survivors that we meet, and arguably most importantly, our fellow participants, without fear of saying the wrong thing, quote unquote. Everyone who comes on the study visit has a vastly different background and knowledge set with their own contribution to the wider visit. Speaking for myself, I know on past study visits, I have been exposed to a huge range of perspectives and backgrounds solely through just chatting to participants on a casual level. To put on my marketing hat for just 1 second, I think another unique selling point of the trip is the fact that it is bracketed by preparation and reflection seminars. These seminars are delivered by our Director of Education, Lynn Jackson, who I'm sure you know. Lynn has been leading study visits across Europe for the last 18 or 19 years. So she has an acute and a detailed understanding, not only of the academic history that goes along with this trip, but the kinds of the issues or the challenges that arise for people embarking on this trip. There's a great deal of emotion tied up in the history of this period. And what's most important for us at HEI is that every participant feels supported and comfortable. And the preparation and reflection seminars are a way for us to process our experiences as a group. So moving on now to some of the practicalities. The dates that we've set for the trip are Tuesday the 2nd to Friday the 5th of April. So the Easter Monday is that week, and then we have that Easter break. Our flight departs on the Tuesday quite early. I think it's about 6:30 in the morning. I'm very sorry. It was the only departing flight on the Tuesday. We'll be arriving back in Dublin late on the Friday evening, about 11 p.m. The cost of the trip is 649 in total. This includes your flights, your transfers, accommodation, guided tours, museum access and tickets, and meetings with survivors and descendants of perpetrators. We require a 50% deposit, which comes to 324.50 cents. Once we have that deposit, we are more than happy to arrange a flexible payment plan that suits you. If you'd like to avail of that, please just get in touch and we can work out the details. Our accommodation will be staying in the Amano in the Berlin Mitte district on Augustastrasse. We've stayed there before. It's very nice, very central. It's within walking distance of everything. We'll be doing double rooms but single occupancy, so I hope no one is worried that they have to top and tail with anyone. So I suppose now I'm happy to pass it over to you. If you have any questions you want to ask, if there's anything that wasn't clear there, please just let me know.